To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When no supreme amongst humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3, every devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms' atoms in all aspects. With supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the faults and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness and death. To page 15, to the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's mountain in Rajragiya, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental conscious element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely and dwell on perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadaviputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed in that highly praise that's spoken by the Bhagavan. Page 25 for the short mandala. Sashi pogi jukshik metok tram, rirabling jinidi genpadi, sangejing du mikteul wagi, drokun namda jingla jopa sho, jetsa lame dape ken namki, choku kale ken se trindigne, jeta sampel du chetsin mala, zabge choki chapa baptu so, Yidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami.
Zanje Jodan Soji Shonama Janjo Bada Dani Jas Tage Jejen Jive Sonam Je Dola Benje Sanje Dovara Sanje Jodan Soji Shonama Janjo Bada Dani Jasonji Tage Jejen Jive Sonam Dola Benje Sanje Dovara Sho Sanje Jodan Soji Shonama Janjo Bada Dani Jas Dāgye chēchēn jībē sōnām jī dōlā bēnchē sāngyē dōgurā shō. Kāngā tē sē nyē sāwē dāwā tōngchē pāwā yī tāmbē shīnē tē sē wē kūtām tēlā chā sē lō. Tōngyē nyē chē sāndē chō wē lā chē chē sē sē kā chē tē tē kōyō chā nā wē mā tē tē chē sō lō sō tē sō shīndē lō ndō shō pān tē sē wē lā mā rā mbō chē. Dāgye chē wūr bēn tē tē chō nē kā tē chē mē kō nē chē sāndē kō sāndō chē wā rō tē tē wā sō sō. That good long come this us.
Please do a short meditation.
다 가와곰 미세 드링 지든 참고곰 메제베야 시진기 슝 던저 온도 진지 되는래야 저와 친구 좋은데 깨워서 뭐 인템시 가와곰스라
Now, Joyce, think how wonderful one has the opportunity to reflect, to listen and study on the Protector Maitreya's teaching of the perfection of wisdom by way of the 8 topics, and think how wonderful that opportunity is.
다 롱종 비딩 SSS 대시라
So now, be aware of the breath, breathing exercise.
다 비딩 메디테이션 대시라
Now, breathing meditation. Spend some minutes on that.
아야. 다. 다 도스리 왕자. 안다. 다 기생 저 택바 챔베 랑가 남샤 데스셰라. 다 디디레 한저 셈로와 셈기규 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 땅아랑서 참말로 대화도 등에면 되거라. 이게 되고요나니 다 셈 두고요다. 셈 두스도 셈 시와 셈라 시와 고요라. 셈라 시와 매나니 다 치게 변조 당 튼진 나가서 야고 요네 인도가로와 제가 디인도 먼저 지 가서 오래 강에 와 만나서 강에 릭직디 다배 뭐를 칭호보단 저윤 강에 연대기 요래 속당 풍보다 릭직 셈단 저 다 지난다 삼로 타돈다 셈나 저 요들레다 뭐스 저 유메디 니차가 요래다 당보데 배나서 칭호보단 저 요디 아니 남시 정무차는 저 차외 동에 용거도 아니 남시 차오트나 직외 동에 칼라메나 저거도 외 동에 드즈릭도 다 칭호보 변조단 저 요래로 세단도
나를. So we were looking at the broad overview of the paths, particularly the great vehicle path of the Mahayana. And in that context, we were looking at this thing called mind or mind stream, the stream of consciousness therein. And it's a given that within that mind, we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. That's a given. We want to have well-being. We don't want the opposite of problems. But in order to foster such a mental well-being, we need to subdue the mental continuum. We need to subdue the mind. And we find that when the mind is subdued, the mind is at peace. If not, no matter how much of these outer material things you might have in terms of wealth, you won't find mental happiness there. Now, in terms of the conditions for suffering, we can look at it in a twofold sense. In one sense, these outer things, these material things, these sights for the eyes, the forms for the body, they are the conditions for our dissatisfaction. For example, when we're cold, we want to wear warm clothes to prevent feeling cold, or if we're hot, kind of looser clothes and so forth. If we're hungry, we need to eat. So on that level, there's a level of suffering that's related to these outer material things, but there's also a mental level.
다 심기 강에 심기 세배 강에데 제가 집 변조게 소토고요 말해 와 단답배나 하딩상 알아서 눕조나라다 세부 차용도 심기 강에 가서나 치 변조 야고요 와 다치 칼라 디기요레 둘로 디기요레 강바에 디기요레다 지 튼진 야고 치 튼진 뜻에 되죠 그 야고로 와다 딩상다 셈게 세베 강에 망고 쇼질 딩상 셈게 나자기 민담한데 코니 가서 지직마제 고제 세든데 다 민 멤베 민 따제와 셈게 미 셈게 셈 삼데 데마도 삼로신달도 니 삼로 텐야 망타 니마고 아니 아카자 오버 미니지 라고도 하다 저런서 될 직다 민담한데 레버 민따셔와 민도 가라 민 가르다나 마다나 팅상하게 아니 될라다 맨 약쇼에 단다 닥스던 저요 맨데 되기요레 메미 미마지 털레 스고마 니후베서로 처음에 요소를 써야 되죠 아니 심라 팽거에 계절데 내가 심 탐바제적으로 메시지 오늘 펜토고요 말해서 아니 제일 디 닥스드 망고서도 아니 탐바데 몸에 소셔도 아니 디 제가 드즈 단다 심 춤이다 어저 남배슈네시나 춤이지 남도 세그레 심 아니 삼태야 많다 남도 많다 아니 레와 많다 톡바 많다 아도 디 드즈 창마 가르를 되는 것은 먼저 찍찍을 이제면으로 먼저 찍찍을 이제면 네네 찍찍을 자와메 찍찍을다 찍게 참바단 자와메 인상 아니 수수배 남도 다 독배나는 대제 다 심지 강에 먹고 쉬어지 알레 또 내가 말하는 저 한다 윤조의 심 강도도 상관 심고 선조래 제단도 저다심 데 두단게 탑란데 나뭐 심두다 심데 두야라 탑람지 고고 열어라
So then looking at this second cause of our dissatisfactions and problems, they can't be solved by outer things alone. For example, wealth, food, these conditions, clothes and so forth, they can't solve the mental problems because we can see that, for example, in our society, we have commensurate wealth, but we still have a lot of mental problems. So many, in fact, that we seem to keep coming up with new names for these diseases, be it something like an attention deficit disorder, insomnia, label or not, depression, whatever, we tend to keep coming up with the needs to subdue these mental difficulties. And so sometimes we go to a doctor to get a prescription or medicine or drugs for that. And then sometimes drugs are given so that we relax our minds. They're called antidepressants. And sometimes drugs are given so that we sleep and so forth. So whether you take them only temporarily or end up taking them all the time, what we need to remember is that these are just temporal reliefs from the mental problems we face. But really what we need to understand is that these mental problems that we face are coming from these thoughts of inappropriate attention, these thoughts that are not valid, these thoughts that are mental constructs. And we tend to find that with the mental constructs, we have less loving kindness, less faith, less affection, all of these things. So if we're looking, for a temporary method to stop, even the temporal method to stop those mental sufferings, then we have to say, well, it's subduing the mind.
sim dünyada jerumjende sonda sim dünyada shung kan chungjungge 명아치고 간중중면은 흉침보다 tum바지 과래서
That's all.
디송다 jerumje.
So what Lama Tsongkhapa says is that if you are about subduing your mind with a valid method, you have to have a valid source to do that.
mama 먼저 비디도라 그 전대로 마신 비디도라. 로마신 레송을 했더니 단대 주주되니 란주디베 튜레 수수셈 튜레 메시지 신주디에 투주 마레스타 대주주 랍제 전부래다 먼저 단다 로전 제하데 수수셈주 마시와 당직서야라 탑시 치오레스타 미신 게셈 주와다야다 배전시라 제나 디칼레카로레스타 란주디베 튜인지 신주디베 튜마인스
When we used to study with Chöden Rinpoche, he gave us a wonderful piece of advice. He said, this current time, is the time to subdue your own mind. It's not the time to go about worrying about other people's minds. Now, when you study, when you practice, that's all for your own mental peace. So, put effort into subduing your own mind. Why? Because it would seem, well, it's very difficult to subdue other people's mind streams.
단다 딜라야 두스레 강산 단다 태과 준비 디 냠네 심디야 그 탑란들 림바니 홍보되보다 홍보는 림바니 아니 다 단다 태과 준비 추에서 당아란저 단당원에게 개발상보 쉬어지래서 봐. 제 개발상보 지금 참고 공부 먼저 제녀요 말에 그봐
Yes.
지금 참고 공부 미된지 제 담불을 패요 말에 간디 이것인데 슈데요래 그래서 저는 파고탐이 로주디 로요나 세워하고 그래 되더라 제가 파고 덤에 간디 이거 주진 칭 दूसरा बात है दे तुम बचम देंदे पेने लोग गुब्जे के जेला था तेवा चंबे छुदे 산제 제주베 가둘라 대화 준비 최대 용다기 요마르바 산제 공부 냥엘에 대해서도 대외장 용다 매비 인자 아니 냠소르다 냠바 인자다 대발은 대화 튀어야지 아니 봐봐 도미 지금 잠복 공부 두제 지금 잠복 공부기 아니 좀 된데 손찬조 시진이 되어 된데 레스제 아니 손네 앵안절로 단다 차고 롭전시 총하데 된데게 가딘이 찍네 니네 알아서 텐데텐데 글로전 지기 총하데 배 겨상보 문에 야고다 간저 뒤즈 닝마레로 뒤즈다 다 고도 하다 잠블링데 배 툭초죠 직초죠 간저다 저는 연대 네거티브 살다 연대 쫑 철다기나 잠블링 지기야라 까마카실레 메데베 소르레로 아니 미 줘봐 미 줘봐도 전에 도다 미 줘봐 남제 도르 아니 남식 준르 차려도 도르 메시지 다 네거티브 먼저 되나다 신나서 쉬지래도 다 이나 알아서 디 칼에 안전한서 인지지 바르라디 야거다 딘데 레데 연장스러 나라 문에 개버상부인이다 지금 참고 공부네 주베 중된데 지라 쳐 남지 파자시기 중화데 베메시 개버상부인이다 딘데 양도 상고다 간다 함 문에 개버상부레레다
So, if we look then once more at the Great Vehicle Path and how to practice it, there are two levels. We can approach it from the sharp or intelligent person's approach and the less sharp. Whatever. We are so lucky and so fortunate to have even come across such a path as this. Because Maitreya Buddha, who disseminated this teaching on the vast ground of the path, these methods, we wouldn't see here as a human because he was abiding in Tushita Pure Land. But what we did have, if you have read Asanga's biography, is his account of connecting with Maitreya and bringing that teaching in this world system for us to study and us to practice. So in that light, then 900 years after the nirvana of Buddha, we have the coming of a Sangha, very much there, the restoration and propagation of the Great Vehicle teachings, because after Lord Buddha's nirvana, well, even during Lord Buddha's time, some say that the Great Vehicle teachings was not common, let alone that. After Lord Buddha's nirvana, that aspect of the teachings had greatly degenerated, almost entirely disappeared. So it's thanks to a Sangha who came and reinstored, clarified the Prajnaparamita, this genre of teachings that expounds the meaning on the path to enlightenment. And if you think about it, how fortunate we are to study that path in this time, which is a very degenerate time. Very degenerate, why? Because if we just look at this world system, it's changing so fast, changing moment by moment. Not only that, the people that dwell in this world, us, and their behavior is changing so fast. The weather is changing so fast. So in that light, if you dwell on all the negativities that are taking place in this world, it's probably not so good. So we won't go there solely. But this is to remind us how fortunate we are. Somehow we have the English language, the tools with which to study such texts. And we should constantly rejoice and remind ourselves how fortunate we are to do so.
Talhawarde da ni yoresro ta ongbu nomboge lam nyamlen chewindu ane tanda dire ngondo jena dubdan de mananda ne sanjelan sungo josums tangbo da duba dinshi namcha tu shi 안디네 니 군조 숨지 남샤데야 시 안디네 네 신도 타르바사야 돼 닌시 남샤르도 타르바게 거든이 타르바 거든리니 아니 신도 잠도 남샤드샤 디차네 아니 람냠네 시당 림바디 옹부두부게 옹부노보게 람냠네 림바도 단데 땅온도 제나는 데스 숨으레스로
So if we look at Kishla Drupadang Dempa Namdang Shirwadi.
Drupadang Dempa Namdani Sanjala.
Sanjala, yeah. Yeah. So coming back to the twofold division of approaching the teaching from the sharp faculty point of view, the intelligent practitioner, as it states clearly in the Ornament for Clear Realization itself, Clear Ornament of Realization, the accomplisher, the truth aspects, the three rare sublime ones are the goals. So what's being said here is that out of seeing what's possible and through reasonings, the sharp faculty practitioner goes through the Four Noble Truths, then understands the qualities of Buddha Dhamma Sangha, the three rare sublime ones, and goes for the state of liberation.
다 옹보nom보 티진 람라 쇼용디 아니 티진 람라 마슈코네 동이 도도고 요래 산제 공만 도도고 요래 타르바 도도고 요래 겨왕아지 등성모 도도고 요래 디인자 아니 딜라 람라 다야 쇼용디 찬주심 냠린시라 렘바들라 다시 냠제기 냠린시 렘바치다한테 패진 옹보nom보게 옹보로도 첨보도 저기 냠린시야 균대 명아 든지 렘바데 옹보두고게 로도 때스 셴바디기 치야래 이나양 윤대명아데 다신냠제 냠렌디나라 윤대명아드니 마신 틴디도 탄다데 송선벌 좀제 갈라나 그 저왕아지 또 차로 저왕아지 요바 또 차도 니심제 탐제랑 마이 친요와 라는 거리 주문이도 예신예 차로 예신예 차도 아지다 nga 타바 톰나 디기민도 nga 코월레 타나 디기민도 nga 동엘레 타나 디기민도 nga 거린지 이제외 제와진 이심제 되다 탐제 동엘레 냐나 디기민도 디제 nga pwe kadin chimbore she dije nge jijigodo chezang nge ran jeba zinya de thola ani shen jeba zimba chigodo sa lo de pe ranshu ge shuk chimbo shube je le thogu yorwa odi chanju sing lam nyam le roda rimba de odin des chen yores ro.
So then looking at the cultivation of the bodhicitta from the point of view of the great vehicle path, seeing what is necessary to do in terms of the great vehicle, that the sharp faculty practitioner will have cultivated the strong sense of the mind going for liberation and Buddhahood, and also the notion of past lives will already be there. So the sharp faculty practitioner, what they are going for first is a direct insight into emptiness, because they would have already been familiar with the notion of past lives and that liberation is possible and that Buddhahood is possible. So then on top of that, they will practice the method of equalizing and exchanging self for others. Okay, the less sharp faculty practitioner will go through these 6 causes and 1 effect, step by step. Yes, in terms of the sharper faculty practitioner, equalizing and exchanging self with others, the first 3 of those steps are a basis and already there. Why? Because they would already have thought about the notion of there being past lives. They have a strong sense of that, and the fact that each being has been their dear parent, and seeing their kindness and the wish to repay it. Then they go quickly through the equalizing and exchanging self for others. So therefore, that is the sharp faculties practitioner's approach. Now, why is this strengthened? Because when they see the sentient beings having been their dear parent, then they're thinking, oh, that notion of going for Buddhahood is not just about me. How kind those other living beings have been. I can't just leave them. So therefore they develop this very powerful kind of resolve, the sharp faculty practitioner, to work for others in order to be enlightened to help them.
다들 니 닝지 첨보디 게운디 심제 탐제 동해를 태나치면 동해단 태워 다그 차워서 학생님지 따디 내가 전부 차고래 먼저 뒤주 망보지 인지 공부일러데 심지 신지 동해를 미고 지고 삼단되기도 동해단 대도디다 먼저 년단 다좀 봐도 돌래 지기였다로 그러 미수이네 배조를 동해지 통인데 아직 동해다 매워 제로잖아 동해다 매로잖아 삼바지다 먼저 민신제라 배지 다카타마라지르미시 용구여래로
Yes.
다 동해를 태웠다가 자기 인사야지 네 매비 인자 아니 망보지 디 닝제레네 심 껴르야 당 수수 심 shum려야 당 수수 심라 동해다 요야디 아니 동해 텐데 좀 되게 닝제디 용구여 말어 동해를 태웠다가 자기 인사 로덥들리게 말어 로덥리야라 아니 심지 신담제라나 거든 친구인바디 삼로도 고고여다 되면은 야면은 이제 심지 신담제라네 용원 참봤어야 들어와 그래서 수수 마지기 풀을 제외 저 이유동으로 아마딩을 수수 부구디 내가 도자치네 얘 부구 야고 여색으로 하고나 배 이동으로 난제로 근데 부구디 돈달라 파마게 배 루소 롱주 로 땅기도로 파마게 제자디 인자 네 디인디 용원 참바 아니 야면은 심지 신 거딘 친구 other than the loading in the Yuna and Simji Dungele Tena, Dungele Teona, Chimaro, Dungele Tel Dag Chao Sagda, Ninjidi, Hasan Ninji Sadi, Hasan Ninji Nieva Duta, Chanju Sim with Yulaku or Esra.
So then coming back to the great compassion and clearly expounding its meaning, not just the thought that how wonderful if sentient beings were free of suffering, but that second thought, I myself will take responsibility to do that and separate them from that suffering, all sentient beings. How is that qualified as different from a general compassion? Well, the foe destroyers have the thought, how wonderful if all beings were free from suffering. And also we have that thought. What we might not have is the superior compassion, with the thought, I myself will do it. I will take responsibility to free those beings from their suffering. And kind of a sign that we might not have that superior thought is when we get downhearted, when we get kind of deflated and we can't carry on. But actually to have the thought of the great compassion is like a bravery. And how does one cultivate such bravery that is the thought of I myself will separate beings from suffering and its causes, the great compassion with altruism? It is from reflecting on the kindness of sentient beings. So reflecting again and again on their kindness, how that they have been kind to you, is the method to get this brave resolve of responsibility. Or we can look at it from the point of view of loving kindness. When we talk about loving kindness, it's really like the loving kindness of a mother for her only child. Now, if a child is going through difficulties, be it disease or not enough clothes, whatever, hunger, the mother essentially will do anything to dispel the difficulties for that child, even at the behest of her life. So this second type of kyapdögin ningje, that is, how you say, qualified by a resolve to do it personally, comes from the kindness and thinking, I will do it.
That you know, that Dungela Jobia Nubasula do Tauro, Arala, this was your maratanda. So the mission Tangi studied the Chandrakirti machine, Labja de Redo. So same Maduna, miss him due to Amendoa. And the Susu Dungele Matena, mission Dungele Chapter Amendoa. On the Chibaredo, Samala, Korea Dagdona, Tagbag, Tomnama, 2 day, Tatilea, Jobia Nuba the Sulato. And those some Dana aware, Sansan Alonso Besha Tundal Kaleshu Jagora. Besha is Simjin Dungin said to do, said to Mare, sing with Dungin said to Mendoada, several Ming Gerachimbo. And a Cormangbo, Mimangbo, Susuyan, Labe, Cormangboyana, Cormangboyana, Tando Dungi, Yokta Zojumeva, Yok the Chero, Rodegdo, Jeza, and Dungi Mara dress, Majin dress came into a pit. Some of the machine, 배샤 망고유나 동에 체로래 다 삼루단시는 야고 피주야고 단쇼고로 삼루단마시는 민첨보유나 야 동에 되어버래 담년다 코르망보유나다 대외장 학과도 먼저 미신인데 대화치고야라 빼자 성불해도 알아 미신인데 단대 저자 전환도 망고지 기대 시민이야 돼 단다도 당에 하고서 세우 쉬우시 하고서 기대 시민이야 아니 미래 자성보다 저자 아니 미 코르망고유나 자성불해도 동에서에 파셔 동에 말다는 것도 저자 다좀be 고마토이네 동에 세두고 말이다 산제 냐지그래서 제당에 심지신 탐제 동일에 대야게 체되다 산제 공부 뉴를 토고도 도시엔 장주심 계고다
Kisla peshayan ba dungyo chungwe gi kodu kasa takpa nangla ju joto dilayan ba. Te kasa takpa shiklang ba takpa.
damgna
Dam.
kowe dam
Mud of samsara.
Kowe dam.
Okay, so now we have to check whether or not we can, in fact, remove the suffering from other living beings and its causes. Can we do that or not? In reality. So, well, the advice that Chöden Rinpoche gave previously comes in here exactly, meaning that now is not the time to subdue others' minds, it's the time to subdue your own mind. Also taking it in terms of suffering, you can't really stop someone else's suffering if you cannot stop your own. Similarly, and money, no matter how much money you have, that doesn't remove suffering. The name and reputation does not remove the mental problems. Having a retinue or a following, whatever, that doesn't remove the cause of the suffering. In fact, oftentimes having these human connections just makes the problems more. We know that having more money definitely doesn't stop the problems from going away or being a renowned person. In short, in the human society, we have a lot of difficulties just on a kind of basic level interacting. So that's probably why a lot of us have cats and dogs. It's easier to relate to them and they don't relate back. And taking it a step further, if the foe destroyers themselves, the beings, the Arya beings who are out of samsara, can also not remove completely the sufferings of other beings. So then the question is, who alone can do that? Only a fully awakened Buddha. There comes the thought. I must generate the bodhicitta in order to help the sentient beings to become a Buddha. I must become a Buddha to that end.
어디제 다디네 전주 쌤 줄에 제와당 어느 대과천배 남르숙 지진 소람톱 다들 남 단당한도 저와시는 게 남도 저와서야지 전주 쌤 토바다 다디 제일 단 드링게 지랑서 가야 말에 제일 거 등에 라고 그러서나 전주 쌤 생이 상황 줄에 제와라 신행에 와도 토고 요래 남도 저와서는 저와시와니 실라승도 되고 한다 여자를 뭐지 남시 닝기나야 조르와서와디 니추 조르와드네 가르스네 시내다 황도 송도 되와라 아니 조르세바네 실라 송도 되와 스타제 오스도 제지로 제 제단다 시내 태왕 와도 고고요를 잔주쌤 마지 공로와 제단다 시내 공고에 대한 어떻게 좀 차용도
기슬라 름비셰 기밍 수 텐달라마디
겹서름시
겹서 like
겹서름시 겹서름시.
So then comes back to our generation of that mind, of the unfabricated or uncontrived bodhicitta, of course, within the great vehicle. And this is what we were looking at previously. So then you enter into the paths of the Mahayana. The first goal here is the first path of accumulation. And as Gyaltsab Rinpoche states, by definition, you must generate the union of calm abiding and special insight in order to cultivate that uncontrived bodhicitta. Some say it's not necessary, but here Gyaltsab Rinpoche uses a definitive end to a sentence of the definitions, saying that it must be cultivated.
다 대진 그 총람들 기생아서 다양자로 뭐지 총람 중딩 첨부체로 근데 다 조람 다 대진 총람라 냠샤 연구여다 냠샤 연구여래 다 람라야 슈니 냠샤데 신의 연구여와 다 냠샤사데 동반이라 냠바샤거든 제가 냠샤사데 냠샤데라다 니나누바스라고 그래 제가 니나누바스 니소라 니가 나와노라 야 뎀바투바 나요 나와데 파가브라 다 데메메시 요마르와 아니 딜라 니나 누와스 콜라 니 나와데 요마르와 뎀바투바 나 요마르와 뎀바투바 메와 인자 나에 메와 인자 디 나와데 누바레스 제가 냠샤 세데 데레 다 냠샤데라 니나 누와데라 숨샤오레 덴로기 니나 누와 군조지 니나 누와 아니 유이진 다데가 나와 누와스 니나 누와스 니나 숨 눕즈지 셰게요라 다 총람 전람 내가도 아니 덴루지 나와다 이제 유진 다데 니나노바데 요지레다 군조 나와노바데 요마레다 똑바로가 똑바
디 가사 석람당 조람니
조람라 다 니나 숨문하네 니나 니노와도 찍면도라 찍다래면서 나 군조지 나와노베데 요마레스
디 라데 요르바 Okay, thank you. So now then we come to the different levels of that first path of accumulation, which we said was a clear realization of Dharma, small, middling, and great. And then we're starting to move into, when we get into the path of preparation, the next path, a much more kind of solid meditative equipoise upon emptiness. Now, when we get into these stages of meditative equipoise on emptiness, the dualistic fixations start to set, meaning that the appearances of duality start to stop. Now, there are different levels of this. There is the appearance of true existence, the appearance of relative truth, and the appearance of the difference of subject and object. Now, in these first two paths of the Mahayana path of accumulation and preparation, two of these three sets, i.e. the appearance of true existence and the difference between subject and object, that begins to set, that begins to not appear. What you're still left with, however, at this stage of the path of preparation is the appearance of relative truth, because you're still using a generic image of emptiness. So that is, the relative appearance is still there. But we're starting to go into this thing called what's called nyamsha on emptiness, or meditative equipoise on reality.
다 니는 눕셔야지. 다 빼라오지. 빼라고 쉐비는 먼저 빼라고 쉐비는. 말한서 때문에 그러와. 무비로들 다데디. 먼저 심상마 때문에 나나 주스나나. 스스 초보 깨지시에서는 암절을 고고 말해.
Yes.
어딘데 니는 눕셔야 되와. 빼나 야면은 니 도부 쿠베 내가라. 아니 대고면도 암절 고면도 미기 통고면도 와 상마. 디다 지버래. 냠샤 대주내가라. 아니 가른 이유는 미기 통하여 말해 암저 거야요 말해 미지기 수고를 쉬베이나 나자다요 말하다 쌤 이시지고다 이 두고 이시기다 이시디 지고 가는 메시지기 뒤에다 베나 이시디게 나래다 벤데르바 동반이다 돈이도 로니베 추간라 추샤고나시 출라 추샤시 세도
So to give an example of the way the dualistic fixation, or the way duality sets or begins to not appear anymore, is like when one is watching a movie, to give an example, and you're so focused on the movie and your friend says something and they speak to you, but you don't hear it because your mind is totally absorbed in the movie. That would be one example. Or when you sleep, when you're in a deep sleep, you don't hear sounds, you don't see sights. And in that sense, when you're in this meditative equipoise on emptiness, you would not see with the eyes or hear with the ears, and if someone were to even hit you, you wouldn't feel pain from that. Because it's almost like the mind that's meditating on emptiness and the subject emptiness have merged like water into water. Ninamgi nup.
제가 디네가로 유진 타데가 나오는 거래. 배나 먼저 단다 탭들라 따이너와. 따이는데 먼저 믹시다 탭바로라 동바단 저와면데 데메도 지시는 것도 탭데 파스데 믹시 투지는 군이 제가 유진 타데 나와서 데 요래다는 건줄라.
Yes, yes.
다데 아니 돈이 냠바 샤요인데 돈이도 로니라 파즈 타데 매우지 군이 찍다 싶어. 추나는 추샤고나시. 근데 아니 유진 타데 나오면도 하시잖아. 어디라고 그러던데 유진 타데 나오 눕사데 어디를 거고요.
Now, the second reference of subject-object setting, meaning no disparity between subject and object. So, for example, when we see this book that Gisela held up, there seems to be a gap between the book and your eye consciousness. There's some separation there. But when you're in meditative equipoise upon emptiness, there is no separation between the subjective mind and its object emptiness. They have merged like water into water. So that's no subject-object split.
먼저 데 유진 타데게 나왔는데야 돼서 곰단다 비딩 엑서사이즈로 비딩 메디테이션 체비네 용거를 가실러와 아니 간삼질라베 미게 토하면죠 아니 암저 드라마고 이제 간삼질레 욱지고 메시 매든죠 소리와 욱지고 대한 우파도고요 수용고도 메시 대미시 카케면죠 소리 텐데지 니 락발라 용야 락바다 다도 락바 도도다 곰데스 규르 못 잡나 예 망볼라 용거래 나 대한 스타스스 가시 경험만 공부인이들 조고 싶을리기도 하대 가시 다 갈래 쉬자고 가서나 경험만에 공부 매우 제체들에 공부 매우 인자네 아디 수수수수기 경험에 레완단 저와 숙침부도 와 리지 제주 춘디지나 남산 배데 데 옥신제네 우간체지 나오는 두고도 하고 배데 암조게 막 그저 미게 마통 저시지 간다 우무시 면조 차려야 된대 용구열.
Now we can get a sense of this lack of separation between subject and object when we do the meditation of the breathing exercise and the breathing meditation. We might become so absorbed and just be focused on the breath so well that we can't see an object or hear an object. And it's almost like the only thing you're focused on at this point is the inhalation and exhalation. And you might be able to do that for a long time. This is kind of one example of it, kind of a gross example, but it is there. And some people can get to this stage quite quickly in this life due to the familiarity of doing this in past lives. Yet others have to put tremendous effort just to be able to get to that sense of just focusing on the breath, and the breath is all there is, due to lack of a familiarity.
다도체네 다드네 통람 동닝무슨도 통용데 아니 니는 숨자 눕두고 그러다 유진 다대 나와 매와 아니 군접지 나와 매와 된루지 나와 매와 지선다 군접지 나와 매와 인자 아니 간도 뒤진 자와시라나야 된데 가서 제제 강게 된진 되어지고 가와매와 깨매와 처음에와 따매와 와매와 도매 다대 되면지 되어니 저것은 담바들라 차절로서 제가 돈이 무슨도 냠샤이시 딩올라 아니 용아요, 다요, 용아요, 뭐 도요, 뭐 가요, 뭐 대요, 뭐라 개요, 뭐 지가요, 뭐 군섭디게 창마 요 말을 났다. 냠샤 딩올 요 말을 라마시 요 말을 라고 요 말다. 단당한 저 어디라고 여러분. 당연히 샤진들아.
When one gets to the when one gets to the path, the Mahayana path of seeing, then all of these three sets set. They don't appear. So, for example, there's no duality or fixation of dualistic appearance. there is no split of subject and object. And then this third one of the appearance of relative truth, that also doesn't appear when you're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, on the path of seeing. As Nagarjuna states at the beginning of the Heart of Wisdom, I bow down to Gautama, who taught that dependent arising is the freedom from the elaborations of these 8 conventional reference points. So there's neither coming or going, there's not the one or the many, there's no production or cessation, there's no permanence and no nihilism. So none of these 8 doors, as they say, of relative truth appear for that practitioner in meditative equipoise.
어디지? 다드네 저 통람 무슨 랍신데도 다 통람들라 통람티 냠샤당 제덥니 제덥체 드니 가로 많이 봐지 좀 샤르와 아니 냠샤들라 바자면나다 남들람니 샤다 통람들.
Right, so in the path of seeing, we've got that can be divided into three kind of states within it: meditative equipoise, subsequent equipoise, and then neither of the former 2. So there's a third category. And within the first category of meditative equipoise, you're going to have an uninterrupted path and a liberated path.
냠샤사디 당이거든요. 니나누된죠. 좋아. 니나 숨누된죠. telata 제직이 딜라 냠바샤고체.
Right.
다디 바제멜람스데 갈라고 그래서는 다디 통람지네가라 동반이라 냠바라샤 출래 추샤가 냠바샤요인데 로데다 누가 전부 쇼차라. 로데 누가 전부 차는데 아니 디 도게다 딘지 와 딘지 군다. 딱 딘지 군다 람나.
त्यसको 딘지 군다. Yeah.
줍데 옹기. 소션조들다. 줍다 옹기 와. 줍데 옹기 아니 템바투 요레스타 켈렌체다 일라 딘지 군다. 디 샤고 바자다 제와디 아니 데 바제면한데 님부체 아니 데다 딘지 군다 사면 라미게베 최진 소트베 뉴버지 리그요 냠샤되게 난. 데 뉴버딜레바다가 꼭된 사야 당도. 유정도 템바시나게 꼭된 사시도. 단다 냠샤이 시디 람덴사 돈용고선도 로데 템바시나지 람덴사치. 다디 냠샤 다가 냠샤 찍을라다. 냠샤 찍을라야 아니 그 딘지군다 사면 라미게베 최진 소베 뉴버지 톱고요 다들. 근데 그 동니도 그 로디쇼 뉴버지 뭐 차용데 딘지 그 라르게트야 민족 뉴버지 파워더지 레기 없들. 딜레베 네가들라 아니 꼭된사디 톱. 텔 남들람 시데다 냠샤 찍을라 파제면란다. 튠치라 파제면란다. 남들람 닌가 톱도가. 통람.
So on that path of seeing, we said there was an uninterrupted path and a liberated path. So going into that uninterrupted path, so you're in what's called meditative equipoise, and in that meditative equipoise, it is like the mind has tremendous power, and it's like the mind has merged with the subjective mind has merged with its object emptiness, like water into water. And then what you're doing is abandoning these intellectual graspings at true existence, these kind of innate ones, and you're applying the antidotes to them. So then in one sitting you get both an uninterrupted path and a liberated path, because the true path that you're cultivating is actually that meditative equipoise. But what's obtained is a true cessation, right? Like a liberation from that. So what's abandoned are these clingings, these intellectual innate clingings to true existence and their seeds. So in one sitting, you obtain both, like an uninterrupted path and a liberated path.
다 냠샤디 네가라 네 돈이 ngusumde nyamba shebe nega dela mige damanda thongmare amjo damanda khogumare luge chawe dungi thame dungi nyongumare chogodoya dungi yomarda 어디지 yomarda 니 칸데다 지부 용사라 나 산제면은 딘데 증네 지부 용사라다
Yeah. So in that meditative equipoise on emptiness, when you enter into that on the path of seeing, within that state, you cannot see forms with the eyes. There's no bodily sensation or hot or cold. You don't get hungry at all. How happy you would be. How wonderful that must be, right?
당원에 코월에 타베 레스크도 궁싱원에 들어라서라.
What you've really got here is the permanent holiday from samsara. That's really the rest we're after.
다드네 냠샬레야 다운데로. 다야 니드 마선 직세 직다운데. 당에 방자지 반네 방샤 가르방도 다디 다 군다디제디 방래. 달 현재 방줄 하데. 현재 세야디다 룹다 샤마샤 요마라. 당안서 군다데 단다 되졸 요마라 치우당 파죽당 둔두두졸 군다데 요마라 먼저 밀려요래 봐. 달 현재디 다 창말을 열다. 고와지 파죽레 치우당 미다 창말이야 아니. 딘질 현재디 왜요러. 다 단다야 하디샤 다 양자 다 저dob치 양결 땅아 아니 당을 말았다 단다디 돈이 웃음도 거들라 dem방원도 돈남지 친이래로 dem방원바도 와서네 돈이 웃음도 또 람 통마도 거들라 아니 돈남지로 돈남들라 냠샤 제dob치 디니 가로마이 웃음지 아니 냠샤들라 바제멜라 남들람 신데서 바제멜라 남들람 디니 가로마이 베 냠샤 숨리고 열다 냠샤들레
So when one gets up from such a meditative equipoise on emptiness, you're then in what's called post-meditative equipoise or subsequent attainment. And you check, like I say, what have I abandoned? What have I gotten rid of? And you will see, in terms of, when we look at the tenets, that one will have abandoned these intellectual notions of grasping at true existence, just the first set that humans have. Of course, dogs and wild animals don't have this intellectual set, but humans do. But you will then reflect and see that you haven't yet abandoned the more instinctual clingings to true existence that all beings have, all unenlightened beings like cows, dogs, and humans. They are left over. So then you have to set about abandoning those again. You have to set about abandoning them again. So we said that the definition of the Mahayana path of seeing was a clear realizer of truth. And within that meditative equipoise of the clear realizer of truth, we had, in that path of seeing, we had meditative equipoise, post-meditative equipoise, and neither of those two. And then within meditative equipoise, we had uninterrupted path, liberated path, because of bachi melang dang. And then a third one, which is neither an uninterrupted path nor a liberated path.
다디 가도 용고를 람서나 안 통람 제도 지지스 양자 냠샤죠라 어디래 통람 제도 지지스 냠바시베 돈이를 냠바시 냠샤디 바제멜란다 남들랑 가야 말해 냠샤시로.
Okay, so where does that third one come in then, that is neither an uninterrupted path or a liberated path? Well, when you're in post-meditative equipoise, that's that third one. It's neither of those two. It's not an uninterrupted path nor a liberated path.
다 제도지 내갑수 양자 다 통람지 제수 양자를 안에 돈이를 냠바샤제 아니 다 딘질렌제게 냠보 딘질렌제 뽕야게 냠보 지하고 고두관에 시제 아니 고람차고래 고람사에 제랑문도 돈이 웃음데 사도 통화데 제수 양자를 안에 돈이를 냠바샤고 인자
Right, so then you know that once you arise from that path of seeing and that you're in post-meditative equipoise, that you now have to start working on these innate clingings to true existence, remember, instinctual. You've abandoned the first set of intellectual ones, and now you have to abandon the innate ones. So when you then enter into equipoise again, and you apply the antidotes to those. So that's when the next path of meditation begins. And that path of meditation is defined here as a subsequent clear realizer, because it's a subsequent to seeing the truth. So that's the path of meditation.
사주지 사당문에 사주바서 사주들다 뭐게도 요모 주체로 딜려야다 딘질 현재들라 중운딩 첨부체 네 제를야 숨숨숨체 고차송아 첨부라고 하들라 타라니 시는데 주차송아 다 당보 방자디 라고네 야야야 샤고래 년부디 아니 중rin네 제 관람사 당보니와 숨바시와 나와서 방자 중리 방자디 다 체림네시 년보디 충리네야 가르서는 알아서 졸라켄스나 다 둘로주니 와트와 둘로주디 안데 둘로게 탁바당 셈바당 락바락바도 추나라 방지 셰보다 남산 칸나라 통콜 배전 치고면도 와 이제 배전 좀 치고면도 와다 탁바디 탐모다 둘로게 직도 팀마카야 서로던데 다 두즈달라 아니 베드 슈크잡 소럽잡 이지잡 베 푸비 망고타네 아니 콜라 슈크잡고도 제가 반자 탐모들라 아니 냠부 슈크 첨부 고고 요래 제가 딜 저와 슈크 첨부 된 거고 요래 디다 저와 슈크 첨부 된 사데 다 딩인지디야 슈크처 저거 요래 사야야야야 콘데 아니 똑바야 처르도 동 딩인지 슈크처 당고 요아 용고 요래 당고 요래 도스체제 아니 사주 딜이야 아니 디버주게 아니 릴이야 바자면 남들람 제도비시장 사례를 공론이야 통남나시 찍라 하고는 드네링도 당도야래로 어두스레다
가서 바치멜람 남졸람 강루마님 beso미로 아래라
여른 제도비시요 당고
야 어제답
당고도 바자면 남들람 제도비시 수슬랍션들
So then when one enters the Mahayana path of meditation, one then goes through the grounds, these 10 grounds, these 10 bhumis, and one does that in sequence. Here we're working at abandoning what are called these innate afflictive obscurations that we mentioned were grasping at true existence, and these have to be also abandoned in sequence from the gross to the subtle. So there are 9 stages of doing that. So 3 sets of 3, small, middling, and great. From the great of the great to the small of the small, abandoning them like that. Well, how does that work? It's very much like these stains of these innate afflictive obscurations are like stains in clothes. First you have to remove the gross ones. So you leave the clothes soaking and all the gross dirt comes out. But you're still left with these very subtle stains or latencies of clinging to true existence. So therefore, you have to remove those. So to remove those requires more detergent and great effort. So with great effort, you slowly develop the countermeasures, the exact antidotes to those subtle clingings to true existence. Now here, the countermeasures for those are on the latter bhumis, when the single-pointed concentration becomes extremely strong. And that is how you apply the countermeasures.
당연히 두세다 단다 사탕보 통람 바제면은 더 돈용 우선도 별로실래서 당도 첨부 숨근안에 람시세 당연히 신시샤제 고den도 오지 된대가는 잡샤나 마 라 첨버숨으로 첨버숨나 아니 시시 남시 남진치 남시디 가려나 탄다 데레 돈용우선도 왜 남시도가 chansen 파괴 주기로 돈람배 주디 람시 다 첨버숨문안에 람시 사디 어디르다 람시디 티진 통람 인제람시 상담디 티진 통람 인제람시 람시디 요마래 어디직신고르다.
Right, so what we should know then are these divisions start to come in of the 8 categories. So there's an exalted knower of aspects, a knower of paths, a knower of bases. But because we've just been going through the path of seeing of an Arya Bodhisattva, that relates to the second of our 8 category topics of a knower of paths. So a Mahayana superior's clear realization conjoined with the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, we know then that begins on the path of seeing.
데르와다 람시지 츠니디 니 셰운데
그래서 딩안라 둔둔치낭도 요르디 낭신
요르
되기래
란준데 간산주지 돈용우숨도 왜 셰르지 셈베 티진 파괴 원도슬라바 다데레 란준데 간산지 돈용우숨도 왜 아니 셰르지 셈 티진 파괴 원도 람시기 츠니디.
Right, so if you have the text in front of you, it's good. If you have the knower of paths. Now, this is from the 8 categories and 70 topics. It's page 4. You also find it in the other book. I'm not sure the page. So with regards to the very knower of paths, it says the definition of a knower of paths is a Mahayana superiors, meaning an Arya Bodhisattvas, clear realizer, conjoined with the wisdom directly realizing emptiness and the continuum of the person who possesses it. Page 4. 54 in the other book. Okay, thank you. This Gishla konto kashik sawa yorwa, kashik the chimbu di kapshipa yori.
Konzo di shokran de la konzo online people is hago che.
Okay, so it's good for the online people to know the pages as well. So if we can let them know.
Say which page?
Can you find someone with the big text? Can you find the definition of it's in there? Definition of paths. 50.
Different.
Yeah, exalted knowers of paths. As long as it says knower of path, you should have the. Yeah. It's the second of the 8 categories, correct? No. Just as was read out. A Mahayana, superiors, clear realizer, conjoined with the wisdom, directly realizing emptiness in the continuum. What page is that one? Definition of a knower of paths, that's what you're looking for. Yeah, anyway, we can find it later. It's okay.
Tela tsinyi khasana ranjunde khansanjuji tonyungu sondobe sherabi simba lapsanga.
Regishna.
Sherabi simba pakwe ngondo lapsanga.
Do.
Ani ranjunde khansanjuji tonyungu sondobe sherabi simba lapsanga. Pena chansen thalamba de juge kunzo simje yorwa. Kunzo simje.
Yeah.
Ode lamshi is lamshi.
Is it the definition of the knower aspect of the knower of path? No, it's not that one. That the definition of the knower aspect of the knower of path is the knower aspect of the ignorance.
No.
How?
Did they made it? Did they that should?
Yeah. Give me the book, Maria. Thank you.
지나는 요래. 디가래 값이오래.
값이베레.
값이베나 남시 진이 요마래.
네.
요마래. 디디체 롱 배치. 디 요마래. 디 제일 저랑 진 때올라마.
Yeah, it's not in there. Anyone who has the 8 categories and the 70 topics, it's in there. Yeah, well then if it's on the PDF, it's on page 4.
어디 된든지 디 어디
Yeah, I guess it's good if we have just that 70 topics and 8 categories. That will be fine.
디나라 란준데 간사주 돈용으로 셔라지 심베 티진 파방원도 돈용으로 셔라지 심발랍도와 디 코드인데 인지민지 당한도 차고래와 디 코디 베나 간조 티진 통람베 주지 군조심제시도와 어디 람시리 다디 군조심제데 돈용으로 로마라와 다디 돈용으로 로데 심발에다고
Right.
대단 심바 인자 돈용스베 셰럽데 심바 인자 아니 전세 파괴 주의지 아니 군조선지 람 탐제 전세 파괴 주의지 람 탐제라 람시인 베차르다 어디 가르스나 돈용스베 셰럽데 심바라
Okay. Now Geshe, we'll be reminded here, this is important, this phrase, conjoined with wisdom. For a Mahayana superior's clear realizer conjoined with wisdom. Why conjoined with wisdom? Because they have already generated uncontrived bodhicitta. So the knower of the path for them is really talking about this bodhicitta part. Because whatever path they have, it's going to be a valid path because it's conjoined with wisdom.
다 돈용어선도 셔럽지 심발람데 신자신지로와 신자신지 아니 직도 직스토서 심베 되는 가르스나 돈용을 셔라지 심베 되는가서나 신자디 대진 파워지 군조 심지체 신지디 돈용을도 배 셔라디체 신자단 신지체로 다 직도 직스토라데 가르스나 돈용을도 로디야 고미운디 장가라 군조 심지 돈용을도 로야 야르게로도 군조 심지 야르게 용거다
right
어디다 심베 되는데 토체 베트 토 가르쳐서는 돈용원수도 로야 곰제다 띵이징야 곰자 숙청부 차연데 내주지 군조선지 단 진배 냠련다 수배 냠련 창마 야 야르게 용거 같다
신제 so
신제디 군조선지체 신제디 아니 돈용원수도 셔라 들어
so there's the holding and what is being held. So what is being held here is the conjoined with the wisdom. So it's the wisdom that's holding, and what's being held is the relative bodhicitta. So here, what's being said is that the two are working together because the stronger the wisdom gets, that also increases the bodhicitta as you go on.
다 군조선지 냠련도디야 돈용원스도로데 야야제도 요라코니
And also as the relative bodhicitta gets stronger, the wisdom also gets stronger too.
베나zo 기생와마 닝제다 돈이도베 셔럽 신베 된시엔바 베나 돈이 고면디 네 돈이 고면디 장가라 최탐제 덴바토야 동아레 저네 디인디 먼저 디인디 미시몽바디 뇽으로 요라 미시몽바 뇽으로디 아니 동해 뇽으로 요라 다 돈이 시엔디 장가라 동해 망부 쉽지 뇽으로 요래 다 돈이 마시나나 아니 동해 빼 망보레샤 삼제 양자 돈이 마시니 미토절라 닝질 학바디 야 페로 요라 어두스레
Okay. So how this works is you have great compassion, but you also have the wisdom consciousness focused on emptiness. Now, how does that wisdom mind support the great compassion? Well, the wisdom mind focused on emptiness is a direct countermeasure to grasping at true existence, or a direct countermeasure to the ignorance that grasps at true existence. Suffering is born of ignorance, so immediately as you apply a countermeasure to that root of suffering, which is ignorance, the ignorance becomes less, the suffering becomes less, and the great compassion becomes greater. Not only that, but you start to have greater compassion for people that don't, that are ignorant, that are suffering. So that is how the understanding of reality supports the great compassion and strengthens it.
제단다 람시디 파괴티 찬신 파괴 주기 참바 인텐 친제 람시인 비켜버다.
So if there's an area being who is a knower of paths, then they necessarily have that relative bodhicitta.
어다 드린 람시디 하고성아.
Yeah.
오늘 다 주주면도 되셔라.
I hope today we are clear on that knower of paths. We've been through that today. We should probably leave off for this teaching.
저는 저 드링 요러와.
Kishla Tiwachiktu online.
저거 갔다.
There's a question coming from the online group. We've just actually probably been through this. Can Gisela provide some clarification around the definitions of the following? Valid path, path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, and their relationship to each other. I think we tend to wrong this. Gisela di sini roade. Tangbo di lam se giseni, soglam giseni, jolam giseni, tonglam giseni. Yeah, actually, Gislas are wondering why this is not clear. We have been through these.
Maybe the Kongi teaching the yes.
Could you please listen to the teaching, maybe? Yeah, next week we will clarify these definitions. Gisela has given the definition of a path quite clearly, and the definition of the path of accumulation was given, and that of preparation and of seeing. But it's good if we are keen, we will do self-study and find out. Yeah.
Dueling de la da manguda subject mangudo kazu shejedo da chiranzo ro nyamshage ninan sumde yago ji dueling ji chana de yago yore nyamsha ane de ne dinji kunda dang henge gi chewa ane namde phajemenla namde lam jedo bishi tuzo chewa oda di digro ni lam getan de lam de do.
There's lots to choose from for discussion. What would you like? So everything around meditative equipoise would be good if we can discuss when the practitioner is in meditative equipoise, the types of mind that start to set, or literally mean become no more. So those three levels. We had subject-object, dualistic fixation, and then the appearance of relative truths. Then the two levels of grasping at true existence. There was intellectual grasping at true existence and innate. So discuss those two and the difference. And then within the meditative equipoise, you had an uninterrupted path and a liberated path, and then the subsequent.
아니 또 뉴스도 쉐어지 심바다 심베 튼지도 심베 튼지 신제신지 심베 튼지 신제신지 다 요바체 아니 직도 직스토어들이 심베 튼지 단다.
Right, so then it's good for us to go over the definition of a knower of paths, lamshe, and then in the mind of that superior that is conjoined with conjoined with wisdom, what is held and what is doing the holding vis-a-vis the wisdom and the relative bodhicitta that's in that person's continuum.
Oh, yeah, that is all.
We'll stop now and dedicate. Oh.
So ye boje jonje me do ta re ra len she nyin de gen ba de san ye shin de me de wa de ge nan da jin la je par sho che de la me bu se ra de she na ga ten le cho ju je wa lo sa den be de me sa sa nye de we me se da do ne jo chi
Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamyatayami. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta has not arisen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Whatever slight I may have created, by paying homage let the Buddha stay and teach. I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these acts of virtue with the dedication praised as best by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma, Sankappa's way of Dharma practice flourish.
May the omens of obstacles be pacified, and all the conducive circumstances be complete.
The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness.
In this world, to the beginner of the kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is the unification of emptiness and compassion. To the Lord of
Holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneous. Hold the subduous moral way, preserving the bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, managing us. Magnificent prayers, honoring the 3 jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples. By relying on the 2 accumulations, myself and others, and the 3 times.
May the teachings of the conqueror lessen